Welcome, everyone. I'm Pat Mitchell. This is the Truth Behind the Trade. Joining me today is Jen. We have an exceptional trade to go over. This is a mistake and something that happens that I believe really leads to traders quitting and believing that it isn't possible. We're going to get into, obviously, some great detail with this. And I know you guys are really going to enjoy this. Anyone that takes day trading serious, this is the episode for you. I guarantee you're going to get a lot out of it. So with me today is Jennifer. Thanks for joining me here this morning, bright and early.
Hi, good morning.
Morning. And so maybe we'll all start. I mean, I know you, other people don't. What's your background? How'd you get into this?
Let's see. I've been trading for, I guess, a couple years now. Adam was actually the guy that found Tricktrades for us. We started a software company together that he actually coded, and I did all the, human resources accounting and, all the kind of business of the business stuff. And everything was going great until, COVID happened. And, I just remember that day, like my phone kept ringing when they shut everybody down. It involved restaurants. So obviously that was like seriously impacted. So
Yeah.
we lost like basically, a lot of the company overnight. So we started looking around like, okay, well, we got to do something while everything shut down. So we kind of started day trading. We first got into penny stocks like everybody.
Yeah.
I think that didn't go very well. The room that we were in was, excuse me, extremely stressful. It was just a hot mess. I mean, people were calling out, tickers. Oh, this stock popped, and everybody would run over there, and just I figured out really quickly that they were, the main guys in the room were moving the stock, and then it, would pop the ticker, the 20% that everybody was looking for, and then they'd all run over there, and then they'd sell and get out. And I'm like, this is like a pump and dump, basically. So
Yeah.
we started looking around. Adam actually started looking around. He found you on YouTube. So we've been here ever since. So
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, that's where they start is penny stocks, and then you kind of, most people, the smart ones anyways, realize just how easily manipulated they are, and that's why, all these services pop up and they promote these penny stocks. And we have a video where Adam and I are discussing, some of the good, some of the bad about penny stocks, and if people are interested, I'd go check that out because it does put things that maybe people haven't thought about into perspective. And I think people would really enjoy it. So moving forward to where you are now, what are some of the issues that you seem to be having? Like what would you say would be your top issue, like what you keep doing over and over and over again?
I'm still very fearful. I know, the past couple of episodes and in the room, a lot of the guys talk about greed and oh, I got greedy. And I can honestly say I probably have never gotten greedy. If anything, you know, I always, I used to really have a problem with hesitation. I've really worked on that, but I'm still extremely fearful, I would say, in trades. I mean, I've made a lot of progress, but that's probably my biggest thing is I still struggle with that.
Yeah, see, I was kind of the same way. I never really had a problem with greed. Like it wasn't about greed, it was more hesitation and chasing. Those were my major issues, was just like always chasing. And
Hmm.
it wasn't so much out of greed, it was just because that's how you're kind of taught when you start researching how to trade. It's like buying those
The
breakouts, like as
breakout.
it breaks that level you're buying, where we do things completely opposite, right? So and the hesitation, greed was never one of my issues, so that's, at least you don't have that. And I mean, hesitation is, it's in the same ballpark though. All issues, they need to be solved. Everything needs to be just in line in order for this to happen.
Hmm.
Now we're going to discuss a trade that Jen took on Qs, and I took this one as well. I was also in AMD. And there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of moving pieces to this trade. Before I get into this, this is something that needs to be stressed. There's levels to this, folks out there that are watching, and new traders are going to look at this trade, and it's going to seem really crazy. This is a trade that we took live. I took live with my live trading members, and Jen and Adam are both members of that. And again, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of moving pieces to this. But if you pay attention, you're going to understand where this trade plan and how this trade plan was developed. And this is actually, it's pretty high level shit, and it's hard to get across that sometimes. Sometimes when stocks move against us, the easy answer that people will give that are very underskilled or have, maybe they just don't have a lot of experience in this, they'll just be like, well, why didn't you just cut it and reset? You can do that. But when we're doing these live trading, my live trading program, it's not a regular live trading program where traders are just kind of chasing my trades. It's designed to push these traders to their limits. And that, because that's the only way that you really you break those hurdles. You have to push yourself. You have to put yourself in extremely uncomfortable positions. And it's all done with the safety of me watching. There's a catch though. It needs to be done that way. And the problem with Jen's trade, or it's not a problem with Jen's trade, she did everything right. And it still ended horribly wrong. And we're going to get into that, and we're going to discuss what happened. But I think a lot of people are going to learn from this. But again, please keep in mind, there's levels to this. And I was talking to Adam about this yesterday, not to make this introduction too long-winded, and we'll get right into the trade here in a second. But I don't know, like I use a lot of analogies from MMA fighting, the UFC. And it's the same thing. It's in the same respect of when you have a casual viewer, somebody that does not understand martial arts at all, they just want to see people punching the shit out of each other. That's all they want to see. They don't want to see in the first round those fighters trying to figure each other out, try to look for tells, try to understand how the other fighter is reacting to some of their feints or some of their punches. And especially when they're grappling, a lot of people, oh, it's a fucking hugging match. I don't want to watch that. But what you don't understand is it's high level shit going on if you know what you're looking at. And this is very similar to that. There's a lot of high level thought that went into this trade, and this trade plan, again, has a lot of moving parts and a lot of moving pieces. So I just want to get that disclaimer out there, because it's very easy to jump to conclusions in a trade like this where it's like, oh, you should have just done this, you should have just done that. No, if you do that, then you're reacting emotionally and you're not actually looking at the charts, because the charts will tell you everything you need to know. Every single day, these stocks will do the same thing. The price points will vary, but they're going to do the same thing. And that's the beauty of this. And when you have that figured out, this stuff, it does. I don't want to say it becomes easy, but let's just say that it does. It becomes easy. Now, that takes a lot of time and a lot of work, but you can get there. And Jen is literally this close. She's this close. She managed this trade fucking phenomenally. And I couldn't be more proud of her and other members that took this trade. I received so many messages yesterday from the Momentum members. That's what we call the live trading program. And they just couldn't be happier that they managed the trade out. Some of them were green, some of them were still red, but the main part is that they stuck with it, and then they saw the result, and the result was just like, it's mind-blowing, right? And I think before I go on and on and on, because I could literally talk about this specific trade for hours. I'm not going to do that to you guys, but I could. So we're going to get into this trade. I think before I maybe go to the charts, can you give me some of your ideas on the trade? Actually, first, I'm going to give background context. So let me go into the share. I'm going to share my screen. One sec here, folks. Okay, so just for some context here, guys, we have Qs. These were the levels from yesterday. It was a trade that we took yesterday. So this is Qs and this is AMD. Those upper levels are the levels of execution to start tapering into this trade, okay, to start averaging in. Now, the one thing that we noticed is some squeeze took over and we got caught up in a squeeze. And the first thing that a trader wants to do is just like panic and freak out. Well, with this here, if you take a look and you actually take a look at the technicals, we have SPY and Qs. Those are the markets, okay? Just to give you some background on this. The markets is what all of this follows, okay? So if SPY comes up to a super important resistance level, everything else will stop, okay? Now, it went a lot further than expected. This was a highly uncomfortable trade, but what we have here is a technical level up above with a trend that is being worked for months. For months, this trend is being worked. And from where we opened, the amount of distance into that trend level is too much. Therefore, it's not going to come straight up into that level and keep going. It can't do that. It's one of those things that it won't do. You got to trust me on this shit, okay? So that's kind of the idea behind the trade. We're executing Qs short into the level and AMD short into the level, but we're just going to focus up on Qs, okay? With protection of Qs because of SPY. So if you can follow all of that, that's the trade plan. That's the idea. It's a bigger picture idea because it's not just a simple trade. The simple trade did not work. It wanted to keep going. Therefore, we need to find a solution to the problem. That's all day trades are. It's just a puzzle. It's a solution. We need to find that solution. It's a puzzle, right? So now that I've given you context on the idea, let's go back into the camera here and let's talk with Jen and just get some thoughts, some initial thoughts on this trade before we go over her entries and everything else.
Well, really, I was kind of focusing on SPY, and I know initially we had Q's calls loaded. So I know initially some people were able to get the first short on Q's before it slipped the level and took the head bump. So I was trying to switch from calls to puts. So I did miss that initial short that I know a lot of people got into. So I went ahead and followed you into the head bump. And then it just kind of kept going. I remember I added in kind of like in Voodoo and where some of the intraday moving averages are. And then I added again at that kind of upper level. And then it just kept going. And I started getting a little worried about my size in the trade. And it just seemed to just kind of keep going. So I was keeping an eye on SPY because I remember you saying about the trend line and everything. And it just kind of seemed to keep going. So I don't know if you want to talk about my big screw up yet or not, but
No. That's fine. We'll go into the trade. I'm actually gonna pull up Jen's entries right now. This will give us a little better idea. So some of the words and how Jen's explaining, they're just levels. When she's saying voodoo, it's just a level. I know it sounds confusing and stuff. It isn't. And a head bump, all a head bump is, folks, is when a trade or a stock, let's say it comes below a level, right? When it comes back up and it retraces to retest that level, it's just a retest of support or resistance. That's all it is. So looking at Jen's charts here, this was an initial trade. right? And she was able to capture that, entered into it, took some off, and then entered into that upper level, like she said, which would have been, I believe, somewhere in this area, I think. Somewhere in that area.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
Okay. So that was the secondary entry. And then it kept going. So what do you remember thinking about as it kept going? When did you really start to hit that panic button, so to speak?
Oh, well, really, when it went outside, like the standard risk is when I was like, oh crap, I felt like initially I probably, well, honestly, I probably started getting a little nervous when the first ad, because it didn't correct my average very much. So I was like, oh, I probably should have added more than two. And then it just kept going. So I hit it with the four. So I was like, okay, I'm kind of working the average down some. But that is kind of something that I struggle with. It's just like I don't ever feel like I quite, sometimes I can't hit it with enough size to where it'll correct my average enough. But really, when it got to standard risk, because I haven't really worked that many trades, other than in momentum with you, where it's like I'm still kind of, if it hits standard risk, I'm like, I hit standard risk, well, it confirmed I'm out, so this was kind of a big step for me to sit there and work through it. But I was like, I don't care if I lose this entire position, I've got to learn how to do this. So
Yeah.
I was, hanging in there. I should have probably added, but I do trade with a pretty small account. Once it got up to that, so I do kind of regret not doing that. I know that's what I'm supposed to do, but I just kind of got worried about the size at that point. So, but that's kind of where I started being like, oh, this is still, because typically standard risk, it's very rare. Well, you see a trade that doesn't, that goes out of your standard risk.
That's right. Like standard risk is one of our risk strategies, how we stop out. And there's a lot going on with standard risk. And when we go outside of standard risk, sometimes we have to, because there's a major technical resistance level or support level that's what we're going to now risk off of. Because now it's a lot stronger than expected, but we're still below a major resistance point. So that gives us protection. So the one thing I want to point out is you're not that far off with your average. So this line basically indicates your average, roughly, okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we'll talk about your exit here in a second. Now, we don't need to necessarily, if it's going to keep going, we need to wait for confirmation. We need to know that it's coming up and it's going to stop. We can't just keep firing at it, right?
Right.
So in this trade, we have this level on SPY. That's the level that we're watching. So we have a pretty good idea. We know the relationship between distance, speed, and then retracement. It's something that I go over all the time. So adding that, even one more, just to correct that average a little bit, is something that's pretty important. So that right there. Now, on your trade, what did you take? You took 5 or you had 4? You added 4 and still had 1 left, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
so you're
So I had
in with
5.
5 contracts. And where you entered that second time, that was probably a little bit too much coming
Okay.
into that initial level, because we need to still have some sort of bullets in the chamber, so to speak. So that's one correction I would make. Now,
Okay.
we saw a bunch of distance coming into that initial level. So, of course, we're going to make that assumption based off of prior action, right? Like how we trade, we see this every day. We're going to get a reaction at that level. Sometimes we don't, and we always need that ace up our sleeve. So that's an important note. Now, if we oversize in something, we're going to get super emotional. Okay. Now, no matter what, in this specific trade, with us giving that maximum risk, remember, this is a trade that we don't necessarily take all the time. It's a very wide risk trade. It's wide. It's wide. We know that. It's going to be uncomfortable. So no matter what in this trade, it's going to be uncomfortable. But because of that heavy protection was such a main trend in SPY, we know where it's going to go. If it breaks that level and it wants to keep going, it has no choice but to hit that upper level. So we should know that. And it's hard to know that just when you're already getting emotional in the trade, right? We know this. Like it's not something that's easy to remember because fear wants to take over and we start to fucking panic. So it's something that I always get my hands off. I calm myself down. I tell myself, just like, so when I'm on screen share and I start talking like, okay, it's all good, guys. We have that upper level. If SPY breaks that level, then we are going to have to get out. So the reason why I say that, and I'm going to get out into this for a sec. The reason why I say that, I'm not just telling you guys that. I'm telling myself that. I'm self-coaching myself. You have to. So if I'm saying stuff like, okay, we're good, that's telling me I don't need to panic right now at all. It's kind of the equivalent of if you're out for a hike out in the woods, and I don't know what kind of crazy animals you've got there in Florida. I would imagine some big cats. Cats scare the shit out of me, but we'll use a bear for example. They're a little better
bears.
than a cat. Oh, okay. So if you are hiking and you see a bear 100 yards down the trail, you might be a little bit like, oh shit, there's a bear here, right? But are you running? You're not running, are you?
No.
Like, I wouldn't think so. It's way down the trail. Like you're pretty good right now. You're still at a pretty safe distance. The bear's going to mind its own business. You're going to mind yours. You're going to go your separate ways. The odds of that bear coming charging towards you are about this low. Very low odds. And it's in the same respect as this. That bear at 100 yards is SPY underneath that level. As long as we are under that level, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be fun, but that's what that is. Now, if SPY does end up breaking the level, and what people need to understand out there, the odds of that, just like the bear charging at you at 100 yards away, are this low. Stocks don't just go straight up like that and keep going forever. They will hit brick walls. That's what these levels are. They're brick walls. It's like running full steam ahead into a brick wall. You're going to bounce, right? So that's what's going on here. It's that protection. And until you start working trades exactly like this, it's almost like you need to burn your hand on that stove, right? And I know that that's not the best analogy because we don't want to burn our hands, but it's the same type of response that we get inside of our minds. We have to have these mental calluses. We need to build mental calluses because it's difficult and it's going to continue to be difficult until we start getting used to it, right? You got to get used to that pain. And it's a necessary evil in trading. It's not fun. Nobody wants to be in trades like this. It's not fun at all. But the more you take them, and then when you see that solution, so this is a very different trade than something that has the only other technical level above is way the fuck up there, like way too high up, right? We got to cut it. You have to.
Right.
This is teetering on that. It is. But it was still within a tolerable area where it's like, okay, SPY's going to tap out at that. It has no choice but to do that. Now, I don't know how big of a reaction we're going to get at that level, but we're going to get something. That's what ended up happening. So Jen, yeah, yeah, it ended up being a pretty big reaction. But with this here on that level, like Jen did everything right for the most part. There's obviously some tweaks we're going to go over, but she did everything right. And now we're going to get into what happened, because this is a really defining moment for traders. And I can relate to this because I've taken trades like this where I've done everything right, and then I still ended up either fucking up or majorly red. And that is such a defeating moment. And I hope people realize the balls that Jen has for coming out and doing this and putting herself out there. I would be willing to bet, I don't even know who else would come on to discuss this trade. It's not an easy trade to talk about. There's a big loss involved. There's a mistake that in her head she's probably beating the shit out of herself for. It's like, oh, I'm stupid. Why did I do this? Right? We all have that self-talk. And for her to come on is a big deal, because trades like this they're so important. Nobody talks about them. Nobody fucking talks about trades like this. You'll never see shit like this posted on social media because people never want to admit a mistake. They have this kindergarten mentality where it's like, if you're wrong, wrong is bad. Well, not in this case, folks. Okay. It's something that we have to work through and we have to confront as traders, or we're never going to get over it. You're going to remain stagnant. And with this trade here, going back into it, I wish I had a better way of swapping out, but that's all right. So Jen did everything correct. Now, with that said, I would hit it one more time once we have that confirmation. Confirmation on this is SPY tapping out into that level, okay? That is your confirmation. Right in that area, right there. That's where we need to add. Either here into that level, or as it's putting in that lower high. We have to correct it. We know it's getting tapped out. Time of day is also very important. At that time of day, we're going to have a reversal. We'll have some sort of a reversal. So that's important. I also would not have started with 5. I would have toned that back a little bit. I would have toned that back to either 2 or 3. And because of the nature of the market lately, that's what I would have done. That would be the adjustments. We have a super volatile market where it is difficult to know exactly what is going to be going on. So that's what I would do. I would size that one down, but that's okay. Let's take that out of the equation for right now. So Jen did all the heavy lifting. Her average on this was roughly here. It's important to note, when she got out, she was just sizing out a little bit, and that's fine. The problem is she had a fat finger, and she got fully out, and that's devastating. It's devastating because we've all made this mistake. And one of the things that Jen mentioned here as to why is this, and this is really important. So I'm just going to read this. I was working my way out of the trade. I think I added okay, but I always feel like I do not add enough size. I tried to add again to correct, but there was no pullback. So we just addressed that. I did not add on the final time because I wasn't sure if the top, I did not add one final time because I wasn't sure if it was the top. So on that there, I do want to make just one more note about, but we do know that the top is there, right?
Yeah.
Within a reasonable amount of like percentage of odds, right? Like we're never 100%, right? You'll never be 100%, but we do know that on that SPY, that's the level we were waiting for. That's our maximum risk. It's a major level. So we do know we're going to get a reaction there, and we need to trust that. Have to trust it. Okay.
Okay.
So on this here, where did I see that? Okay. So I messed up and had all 5 contracts loaded because I was thinking I was going to stop out. So that's the major thing I want to talk about. So one of the, it's that impending doom and that negative thought, and it becomes self-fulfilling. It's almost like you manifested that stop out. Now, I'm not a huge fan of manifesting, but I'll tell you what, when it comes to this sort of stuff, when you put that negative air out and you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to get stopped out.
Right.
What happened?
I'm getting
You
ready.
stopped yourself out.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah. And oops, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking about that because it's like, why did I have that loaded? Because when you stop out, it takes a while to stop out. I've been sitting in that trade the whole time. Why do I have my contracts loaded like I'm going to stop out? It has to confirm past the stop out point. That's a long time. So why am I sitting there staring at it, thinking I'm going to stop out? If I need to stop out, it takes 2 seconds to switch my contracts over there. So that was, I'm like, why did I do that? It's not like I'm just, it happens like that. It takes a long time, so there's a couple minutes there before it confirms out. So
Exactly. And a couple minutes is a very long time. And
mhm.
I've told people to do this exercise. I know you've done this exercise, but just for people out there, even 1 minute, like people love to say that, oh, the market open is so crazy. That's a 60-second candle. A 60-second candle is a 60-second candle. And people say, well, that's not very long. Go stand in the bathroom or your nearest mirror and count, looking at yourself out loud. Don't cheat, and go from 0 to 60. Count it. It is a fucking eternity. Let me tell you, you're gonna feel weird by the end of that. That's how long it is. It's a long time. So if SPY breaks that level, it just blasts through that level. We have a couple of minutes. There's at least going to be two candles. At least two candles. We need to pop through that level and then a confirmation of continuation. It's 2 minutes. It's 120 seconds. It's so long. And that's the mistake. Because fear takes over, we start telling ourselves, okay, I need to get ready to get stopped out here. And then what happens? You get stopped out because you're just putting that out there. It's
Right.
it's not even like a lot of people think like manifestation is like putting it out there into the universe. And yeah, sure, that has something to do with it. But what's going on is like on a subconscious level, you're telling yourself it's over. You've already thrown in the towel. You just don't know it yet.
Mhm.
So we have to watch that self-talk. It's so important. It's hard to catch ourselves doing that. I don't want to make that seem like that's super fucking easy to do, because it isn't easy to do, right? When you are about to get stopped out, you're going to tell yourself, okay, I'm about to get stopped out, right? But this is one of the reasons why on screen share, a million times you've heard me. It's like, okay, I'm getting ready. But until it breaks that level, I'm not touching anything. It needs to break that level before I have that bear running towards me. There's there's no other way really to explain it. It's something that's so important to do that I had to almost tie myself to a chair in order to do it. Now, I used to stand up out of my chair and walk back and then watch my monitors from a distance, because that created space, right? So that's one thing somebody can do. It sounds silly, it sounds stupid, doesn't sound significant at all, but it is, until I had my emotions under control enough that I could sit in front of the desk right at my computer and be within arm's reach of my mouse without making these mistakes. So with that being said, now, your intentions on this were to not stop out. And that needs to be clear, because this is the important part that I want to talk about. So when we make mistakes, one singular mistake, does that dismiss all other positive things that you have done? Everything good that you did, everything correct that you did. Does one mistake wipe out 20 things that you did correct? Does it?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So how do we beat ourselves up over that? We can't. You can't fucking do it. It's like we're so negatively driven. Like everything is, we have more of a response to a negative than a positive. right?
Right.
Like you could put a post out on social media, right? And I'm guilty of this too, where I will have 100 positive comments, and that one that is just some stupid fucking comment, that's the one I respond to. We all do it, right? It's how we're wired, but we got to catch ourselves doing that, especially when we're in front of the monitors and we place a trade and we do everything correct. We just had a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
These are the trades, I'm telling you, where at the beginning of my career, I wanted to fold and quit so bad because it was just like, okay, I do everything right and I'm still fucking red, right? You start having this dialogue with yourself. I would be willing to bet 100% of the 90% that fail, it's trades like this. It's not just regular trades where it's just a little bit of a loss or anything like that. It's the ones that they do correct and they're still red because they still made a mistake. This is where people throw in the towel. And it's so fucking important to realize that you did nothing wrong up until that last second. You made one mistake. It's a mistake that will continue to happen. I'm not going to lie to you, Jen, and tell you that this isn't going to fucking happen again. I still fucking do it. Been doing this for 10 years, right? Now I can laugh at it because it's sometimes I don't laugh at it though, I'll be honest. I get pissed off because it's like, God damn it, man. I was just in this fucking trade for how long and I took it all off. And it's like, and then you see it, it's because we're right at the top. We're right at the top. It's going to start coming down, or it's right at the bottom and it's going to start coming up. And what do you know? That's what it does. The market has a funny way of knowing a human's limits, like a retail trader's limits. Where did they drive that stock up to? Right up into that level, man. All the other stocks are blowing through all of this resistance, but the market, the one that you should be watching, that's the one. And it still remained within risk. It's hard to not get down on yourself. It's hard to not get pissed off when we do all this hard work and the end result is still the same. It's like, it's one of those defeating moments where it's like, and I used to tell myself all the time, there's no way that this is possible. How the fuck is this possible? Everybody out there is bullshit. That's what I would tell myself. And I would have these little pity parties inside my head until it was just like, I had to have enough of that shit, right? You just have enough of like just talking to yourself like that. And it's like, I'm beating myself up. I'm being the 90%. Am I the 90%? No, I couldn't be further from that. I'm not a fucking loser. I'm the guy that goes out there and gets shit done at all costs, no matter what. And that's what you're doing, right? It's so easy for you to just say, fuck this, I give up. I guarantee you won't. You're that close. You did all the heavy lifting.
Right.
So this is where we need to flip that narrative in our head and flip that script. And we need to tell ourselves that one mistake does not take away from the 20 proper things that I did in that trade. And I know it's very difficult for traders watching this to look at a trade like this. You need to understand all of those pieces of the puzzle that were going into this. This was a very specific trade plan. It's not like a regular trade necessarily that we take. It happens sometimes, and instead of folding, instead of giving up and just giving into emotion, you need to work through this. These are the trades that define you and build you as a trader. And it's like, that's another thing too. This is the hardest trade you'll ever take in trading. It doesn't get any more difficult than this. It can't. It doesn't. It won't.
That's good to know.
and you beat it. But you beat it though, right? Like that's a thing. Like that's such a positive. Like Adam said this yesterday. It's like the final boss. You're going up against the final boss. And you just mop the floors with him. You thought he was knocked out. You turn your back and he fucking got you. And that's all that was. You had him. You just needed to give that death blow to him. But you didn't. You're like, fuck, good enough.
I
And
punch
that's what
myself
it
in the
is.
face.
But it's super important for people to understand that trades like this, they're going to happen. You're going to make those mistakes. I still fat finger all the time. And it's usually when I've got too much shit on the go, right? And that's what happened in this. There's too much shit on the go. You might be in one specific trade, but in your head, there's too much going on. You're talking yourself out of it. You're telling yourself to stay in it. You're all over the place. You're back and forth. And it creates this moment where you let your guard down and you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to get ready to get stopped out. And then you don't even notice that you're loading those 5 in. And now they're in. And it starts coming in. And you're like, fuck yeah, here we go. Fuck, he was right. I'm glad I held. And that emotional roller coaster starting to take over. And it's like you start feeling really good that you held through this and you did what you were supposed to do. The objective is met. And what happened? Click, you let your guard down.
Right.
Letting your guard down it's just one of those things. It's hard not to do, but you can't do it. Right? It's yeah, it's a difficult one. I definitely feel for you in this one. But you know, if you're still down on yourself and like, because you probably are, like it's a stomach turning trade. It's like, I'm just going to be blunt with you. Fucking get over it.
Yeah.
You're going to have more of these trades, Jen,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, that's not the most empathetic response, but it's a real response. It's just fucking get over it, deal with it. You made a mistake. So what? It doesn't take away from everything that you did correct in this fucking trade. It can't.
Yeah.
So if you're still like having a pity party in your head, enough of that shit. Like
Yeah. No,
you fucking rocked it on this. There's adjustments you could make. Granted, like I said, yeah, you should have added one more time, correct that average, because I want to show you something now. Well, actually, before that, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, that's something that I've really done a lot of self work on is because I used to be terrible. I mean, I would really beat myself up. I would really be super negative. I would let a loss like that ruin the next 3 weeks of trading for me where I could barely enter a trade. I mean, it was honestly ridiculous. And I've done a lot of self work. I probably had a pity party for a few minutes, but I mean, to go from,
Yeah.
I mean, like literally, I would have a hard time, getting over stuff like that, or I would be super negative towards myself, and really beat myself up. But I was like, oh, well, shit, but I really have made a lot of progress there. So I think, it is something that you can change if anybody else is, struggling with that. So, and then with regards to the trade, I did have a question. Can you like tell me how much should I have added at the top? Because that's something I'm trying to work on.
Okay, so like I said, when you start in with that, I would have started in with 2 or 3 because of the market conditions. And sometimes we need to add a little bit more. So if you're max size that you're pretty comfortable with it, if it went that much distance into that level, you can extend that size a little bit. And a lot of people will take the opposite approach and it's like, yeah, but it's so high up. Okay, if we're right at that breaking point level and you add right here and your stop is here, how much more damage is it really going to do?
Right.
So this, I can't give you an answer. I'm not going to bullshit you and give you an answer where it's like, add this much. I don't know. Okay. I can
Okay.
show you my trade. I'm going to explain what I did there because I'm feeling that average out. Because when it hits that level and it pulls back, I make a note of whatever price it is at the bottom. You'll never necessarily see me pay myself on that first initial pullback when I add, because it's like, okay, it's not enough. I didn't correct it enough. So let's say you started with 2, you add 2. Okay. As it pulls back, it didn't pull back a lot. It's like, okay, that definitely wasn't enough, right? Next time it
Oh,
pops up, remember, a main level like that, it's going to test multiple times before it gives up or goes through. So you're going to have multiple opportunities, and you have to believe that. You have to trust that. You're going to have more than one opportunity, okay? So as it pulls back, or now it pops back up, I'm going to add again. As it pulls back, oh, okay, I'm within a penny now. I'm right there. So then you have a decision you have to make, and it's a real quick decision because we may not get a third time. So in this trade, I do know I'm going to get more of a reaction. There's too much distance there. The relationship between distance and retracement, right? We have to trust that too. We have to believe in that. So adding again, now I've got it. I got you by the balls. The market, right? I fucking got you. I got you figured out. Next time it pulls back, now I'm starting to pay myself. It's a dance. The market is your dance partner. And when it's up there like that, you have to be a good partner, right? And you just got to play with it. You got to feel it out. And that's not easy to do either because you're fucking got emotions running wild, right? And this is why working on yourself, that's why all my videos have to do with this shit, because that's the most important part, right? And it's something that I could give you an answer. I could give you a bullshit answer like 100% of all the guys out there. Add 3, you'll be good. I don't know that though. You gotta play with it. And I'm gonna pull this up just so then we can get an idea of it. So that's where I start playing with it. I should have actually zoomed in to show you guys. Oh, okay. Shit.
I don't know if they can't either.
No, I know they can see it, but.
Oh, no? Okay.
So what I'm doing here, and I'll explain this, is exactly what I just explained to Jen on Qs. Now, on Qs, I could have held and kept going, but I was managing out AMD, okay? So I was trading 2 stocks at once. So I made a choice. I managed my position back green. I made a hair over $1,000 on this trade. I was down way more than $1,000. That risk reward seems very skewed, but again, it's the end result. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm playing with it. And you can see with my entries and then exits, I'm just playing with it. I'm trying to figure it out. And that's what I just explained to Jen. Oh, no, I didn't share it. I'm sorry, guys. Jesus Christ. There we go.
Is it just me or?
Sorry about that, guys. Let me say that again. Okay. So on this here, I wish I would have zoomed in on my exits, but I don't like doing that when I post these on social media because the rest of the day isn't up there and you never know if someone's just full of shit, right? So that's why I just do it like this. But right here, this is what I'm doing. I'm starting to dance with it. I'm playing with it. I'm adding. I noticed when it popped up, okay, it's not quite enough. And then as it comes back down, now I'm adding, I'm really correcting, and you can see all of that size coming off. That's what's going on here. And again, like I explained, I could have definitely held on this. I know I'm going to get a bigger reaction than this, but that's what I did on AMD, and I made 1,200% on my final exits. So same thing here on AMD, right? As SPY's confirming, that's when I'm getting my size in. And then I'm just real patient with it because it had way more distance. So the other thing I wanted to talk about here before I forget, because it's important, this is something nobody will bring up, nobody will talk about. Now, you're a woman, Jen, and over the course of the years, and I had a really, it was an interesting mentoring live class a long time ago. Where I talked about different types of people, different races, male and female. And I've got a collection of 30,000 members, people that I've helped trade. And there's a lot of data there, okay? And the data lines up. And the one thing I want to talk about, so for the women out there, and what Jen said, you know, beating yourself up and really holding on to that. Women will have a greater tendency to beat themselves up longer, okay? Now, for whatever reason, and we don't need to go into my thoughts in that. I like to save that for members where they understand where I'm coming from, because things can get taken out of context like that. But that's something that women traders really need to work on. You will have a tendency to hold on to that longer than a guy. You just will. That's how it is. Men and women are different, right? And that's not a negative. It's not a positive. It's just, it fucking is what it is.
Right.
And again, over the course of doing this with Tricktrades now for 7, almost 8 years, and trading for a fucking decade, you start noticing patterns with people. And it's something that should be noted. So for the female traders out there, be aware of that. You're going to have a greater tendency to beat yourself up and talk down to yourself. Guys do it too. It's just different, right? And again, for the female, you really need to pay attention to that, and you have to work specifically on that, because you can't talk down to yourself and you can't beat yourself up. These mistakes happen, right? And Jen and Adam are both people that do a lot of self-work. This is one of the reasons why I really like them. Not only just members, but, you know, getting to know them more so on a personal level and becoming friends. Like, these are people I love and respect. Like, there's so much that I could just go on about that. But that's one of the reasons why, you know, Chrissy and I really like them, is because they have their shit together. They work on themselves, and they're not people that just sit on the couch and wallow in their own fucking self-pity. They have solutions. They try and fix things, and it's like, it's important. We're actually going to be doing an extended episode here of this, and we're going to be talking about, you know, plant medicines and trading. It's something that we're really big on, and it can help a lot of people. But that's for another time. But I think in this here, you know, Jen had one more question about, you know, I'm going to read it because I really like the way that it was written. Okay. So I've noticed that sometimes I will be looking at a trade, say like SPY short into previous close. I pay myself, and then, for example, let's say it holds VWAP, so I don't add. Then I find out that you added and made a ton of money. It's like one of those pictures where if you look at it one way, you see an old lady, but if you change your mind, you see a bunny. How do I get around that? So that's a really interesting question. I like the way that that's presented, because that's exactly what it is. And that's why my job is so difficult. That's what I'm trying to show people, is to not see the lady, but see the bunny. And that's why there's a lot of, like, sometimes it's just like esoteric thought, or like things that you wouldn't think would work, and it comes off real fucking crazy and weird, but it's like, if you actually do it, it does work, right? Mm-hmm. So to give you like a direct answer to that, that's difficult to do. It's one of those things where it's experience, and like Adam and I have talked about in recent podcasts and stuff that I've talked about through the years, it's just really trusting the process. It's trusting and having faith that it will happen, and you'll see that over time. The best answer I can give you, daily chart. That daily chart tells me everything. So in this exact example, where you don't add because it's holding a support level, and I'm adding even though it's holding that support level, it has to do with where we are on the daily. Okay. That daily is everything. So if we're up high at a peak, right, I'm looking for the short, and I'm looking for a bigger picture trade. I'm looking for the big trade. I'm not looking for just a little day trade. I want that bigger, because there's more potential there. Same thing at lows. If we're at a dip on the daily, like a big sell-off, now I'm starting to hunt for those longs, and I have greater odds at lows to go long. So even though it hit a resistance level, when it pulls back to support, I'm going to take it. Because you have to remember, in order for institutions to buy or sell, they need to rope us in, retail traders. And it
Right.
has a lot to do with opposites. So how you would normally look at things, it's like you see the lady's right there. When you're trying to follow where the actual money is, you need to see that bunny, and that's the bunny,
That
right?
makes sense.
You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
it's hard to explain, but the best way, it usually 80% of the time, 90% of the time, has to do with the daily chart. And they have to rope you in. So just don't follow for that getting roped in. Right? That's all. Like that's like the best way to explain it. It's hard to
Right.
explain. Like a lot of people make this mathematical, and they make it, they always ask me for some sort of formula. And a lot of people will try and sell you on a formula. There's a formula, but it's a real small part of it. It's not mathematical. This is where people need to start accessing their more creative side, where it's not like the analytical side. There's an analytical side and a creative side. Access more so the creative side as a trader. The analytical ones, I know they'll try and tell you that they're doing really well. They're not, because this is art. This is what this is. Day trading is art.
Okay.
And you have to really access that.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, that's
That's a
about
good
like
answer.
the best way I could explain it. So do you have any final thoughts?
No, I actually think this has been super helpful for me. You know, I can't really think of any questions or anything like that. I just, I realize I obviously made a huge, error there, but I really feel like I've really grown a lot, and I'm gonna, you know, progress from here. I'm not, definitely not, giving up or, anything like that. But I hopefully this helps other, you know, traders if they've, ever done this or, um, thank you. I think this was amazing for me.
Good. And if this doesn't help people, I don't know what the fuck does. Like this is the stuff, like, people shy away from talking about this stuff because it's a loss and there is like a mistake made. And again, that's why when people are searching for like day trading information online, whether it be on YouTube or just Googling it, whatever, or even going and paying for a service, they're not going to get stuff like this because nobody wants to admit, especially the guy that's running the service, doesn't want to. He needs to hold an authoritative position in that room, or else it falls apart. People need to trust him, so they'll shy away from losses and trades where they make mistakes.
Hmm.
And that's something that I really, really try to make sure that, if something is in error, just say it. It's like the truth is the truth. Whatever happens, happens, right? Like, we're working a strategy, and that's what's so different with trading is there's strategy. Strategy cannot work 100% of the time. It
Right.
can't. There's going to be losses. There's going to be red trades, right? And those red trades, those are the ones where you can learn so much off of, especially this one. This one, there's a lot to take in, and it is, again, for an untrained eye, it's not going to look like, it's going to look real crazy, right? Like, even on AMD, like AMD went way over that mark, right? But because SPY was still the market, that's the market. Remember, it's not just SPY, that is the market. That is the end all be all. So if that's still holding underneath resistance, I'm holding. I'm going to work that trade because I can always find a solution to the problem. And when you trust that and you have faith in that, it'll work out. So I think this has been great. Thanks for coming out, Jen. I know people are going to benefit greatly from this, and at least they should. And for those that want to take part in this, we have a lot of non-members that signed up for it that are not getting back to us to actually come on. Have some balls and get on, because if you truly say that you will do anything, and you're not taking part in something like this, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, I don't understand. I would have literally killed someone for this type of opportunity. If someone could actually show me and like actually knew what the fuck they were talking about, like I would have killed for this opportunity. So take advantage of it. Like, why not? No one's got yelled at yet. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. You might get yelled at, but maybe you deserve it. So have a good one, guys. I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks, Jennifer. I really appreciate you coming out and putting yourself out there. This is a difficult one, especially with that type of mistake. But you crushed it. You really crushed it. So thanks again for coming out, and I appreciate you coming.
All right, thank you, Pat.
Adios.